So we are in the middle of a season in the church called Lent, and Lent is a season of preparation and really a season where we get our hearts ready for Easter. And so we're actually calling our Lenten series Spring Training. It's a spring training of sorts as we prepare for Resurrection Sunday. And today I want to talk to you about the good life, okay? You know, the good life, the life of your dreams. The life that's the best that you can imagine. The life maybe you've always wanted. Have you ever thought about your version of the good life? What does it look like for you? Have you ever taken just a minute to try to articulate what a flourishing life would look like? If you were flourishing, what would your life be? See, there are infinite number of versions of the good life for all of us. All of us probably have a little bit different version. And whether you've taken the time to think about it much or not, the truth is you undoubtedly have a version of the good life. You're operating with a sense, a picture of what the good life looks like. We all do, because for each one of us, there is an ideal, ultimate end in which we envision ourselves as satisfied. And whether or not you name it and can talk about it, it exists already. And the scary thing to consider for just a moment this morning, for those of us thinking about this for the first time, is how influential your version of the good life really is on your life. The good life that you imagine determines your actions. Did you know that? It really is steering your actions, because it is with whatever end is in your mind and your heart, is with that end in mind that our desires really grow and mature and develop, that what we love and what we enjoy really comes from this version of the good life. It's where we learn what to want, what to seek. Our hearts begin to lean a certain direction. Our loves begin taking instructions from the good life. Because now we're after something. Now there's an image that we're chasing after. And wherever our desire leads us, where our love is aimed, that is where our actions will follow. Every time. Which means that your version of the good life, whatever it looks like, is determining your behavior. It's determining who you are becoming. Your thoughts, your attitudes, your relationships, your feelings. So it's really important today that we answer the question, what is the good life? What really is the good life? And if we're honest, there's a battle raging in our world to help you determine your version of the good life. Every advertiser in America is seeking to define what the good life looks like for you. If you don't believe me, let me just show you two quick examples of commercials that are telling you what to believe about the good life. Here they are.
Who thinks more is better than less? Okay, why?
More is better than less, because if stuff is not if there's more less stuff, then you might want to have some more, and your parents just don't let you because there's only a little bit.
Right.
We want more. We want more. Like, you really like it. You want more.
I follow you.
It's not complicated. More is better. And AT&T has the nation's largest 4G network.
Pretty good. This one is a bit disturbing. Right here.
Why do we work so hard? For what? For this? For stuff? Other countries, they work, they stroll home, they stop by the cafe, they take August off. Off. Why aren't you like that? Why aren't we like that? Because we're crazy, driven, hard-working believers, that's why. Those other countries think we're nuts. Whatever. Were the Wright brothers insane? Bill Gates, Les Paul, Ali. Were we nuts when we pointed to the moon? That's right. We went up there, and you know what we got? Bored. So we left. Got a car up there, left the keys in it. Do you know why? Because we're the only ones going back up there, that's why. But I digress. It's pretty simple. You work hard, you create your own luck, and you gotta believe anything is possible. As for all the stuff, That's the upside of only taking 2 weeks off in August. N'est-ce pas?
Wow, that's pretty straightforward, right? The version of the good life. So about 7 or 8 years ago, I was living in the suburbs of Chicago in a little suburb called Lockport. I was outside with Beckett and Knox, my 2 older boys. At the time, I think they're about 6 or 3. And we lived in a duplex. So there were 6 units, right, one after the next. And this duplex area, we were playing in the driveway. We were playing some hockey with the garage door up, and the 2 boys were shooting on me. I think I was playing goalie. And our neighbor walked over from, I think he was 3 units down, and our neighbor's name was Justin. Justin is a 35-year-old bachelor. He was a really good-looking guy with a nice job, had a really nice car. He had a fiance, nice toys in his garage. It seemed like every time he opened his garage, there was something fun in there. You get the picture of who Justin is. Great guy, by the way. A wonderful, wonderful man. And sitting in his driveway was one of those units where you pack it, we move it. And so they had a for sale sign out in the yard, and it looked like he was moving. I hadn't had a chance to talk to him. So we're playing hockey, and he walks over, and I say, "Oh, Justin, you're moving." He said, "Yeah, we're moving." And he talked just a little bit about, I'm getting married in 3 weeks, and we're wanting to move into a place with a little bit more space where maybe we can begin to start a family. And he says, I was able to sell this duplex in just one day and get more than what I was asking for. And we're actually going to build a house. We're going to build a house in Frankfort, which is it's a lot nicer suburb than Lockport, if you've been to Chicago. And so he was just telling me about how he was kind of stepping in to this new chapter of their lives and how excited he was to have more space, right? To have a place where he can begin raising a family and bringing children up. And I really liked Justin, so I told him how happy I was for him. I commented on how blessed he was. I just said, man, you got good things going. I wished him luck in his new adventure, his new life. But if I'm honest with you, in the pit of my stomach, I had this nasty feeling, really nasty feeling. For some reason, I felt like I just wanted to run and I wanted to hide. There in front of my boys, I felt small, really small. Felt the shame and embarrassment come over me, and it just made me want to end the conversation and head inside. I didn't really give my feelings that much thought in the moment, other than I wish I didn't feel that way. I didn't like the feeling. I moved on with my day. It wasn't until the following day I was reading this book by an author named James Smith. It's called Desiring the Kingdom. As I was reading this book, the Lord revealed to me what was going on in my heart that day as I talked to my neighbor, Justin. What I realized was I felt small because Justin was further along in experiencing my version of the good life than I was. I felt shame because I was behind in my pursuit of a flourishing life. You see, Carolee and I lived in that townhome. We didn't move out when we started having kids. We moved in with 2 kids. And not only did we weren't really looking to buy a home at that time, but even if we were looking to buy a home, there's no way we could have afforded to build a home in Frankfort. Even if we could have moved and had more space, it wouldn't have been quite like he had. And not only did I have 2 kids at the time, this happened about 2 weeks after I had brought a 3rd kid into this house that he was moving out of so he could raise his family. You see, Justin revealed what I already knew. I was behind. I was missing out. Something was wrong. In fact, standing with Justin, I fought the urge to say, you know what, Justin, we're newer to the area. We just moved here in the last couple of years. We weren't sure about buying right away, but we're hoping to. Or now that we have 3 kids, we really would like to move into some bigger space ourselves. And the reason you see all these boxes in the garage is because we moved here from Kansas, and in Kansas we had a bigger place, and now, we've had to kind of store some of this stuff. I wanted to defend my slower pace. Wanted to explain it to him, right? Like I needed to convince him. More accurately, I needed to convince myself that I was still on the way. I was just a little behind, right? Have you ever been there? Just a few steps behind where you wished you could be. Just trailing a little bit from some of your friends. Just out of reach of satisfaction of the good life. A little behind where you want to be in order to actually be happy. You're just kind of on the way, but you're just a little behind. You see, it was in the brokenness of that moment as I stood there with my neighbor, the Lord got my attention and revealed that my problem was not that I was a little bit behind where I should have been in life. My problem was that my version of the good life had been hijacked. My version of the good life had been turned upside down. I hate to admit this, but a rogue version of the good life had captured my heart, and without realizing it, I had adopted it and wasn't even thinking about it. America's version, culture's version, get yours, be independent, conquer, get ahead, make your own pleasure, seek your own comfort, build your own life. It had persuaded me. In our text for today, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 55, if you want to turn there, our text for today is written to people actually a lot like me. Our text for today is written for people a lot like you who have been there before. Our text for today is a text of invitation to a people who their version of the good life has been hijacked by consumerism and self-satisfaction. Our text is written by a truth teller in the book of Isaiah to God's chosen people, but these were God's chosen people that had been carried off away from their land into exile. And now their version of the good life had been hijacked. And chasing a life they never intended to chase, Isaiah says this to them in Isaiah chapter 55. Come, all you who are thirsty, come to the waters. And you who have no money, or don't have enough money, or never quite have enough money, come, buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money, without cost. Why spend money on what is not bread, and your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me and eat what is good, and you will delight in the richest affairs. A simple invitation for those who are tired of not measuring up to the standards of AT&T and Cadillac. For those that have lost our identity in chasing a version of the good life that God never intended. For those tirelessly chasing a satisfied belly. For those who can't do it on our own anymore, this is the invitation. And would you notice who's invited? It's those who are thirsty and those who have no money. The invitation is for desperate people, for poor people. The invitation is for those who have a thirst that no matter what you acquire in this world, it cannot quench. For those in want, those who can't satisfy themselves. Really, the only requirement that Isaiah is talking about in the invitation is that you would come thirsty. And in this room, I know there are some of us who feel thirsty. The rat race has got us worn out, and we carry around a parched heart, and we're desperate for more of something, and nothing we do seems to satisfy our thirst. Yet there's other people in the room that you walked in this morning, and you didn't even recognize your thirst. But all you know is that you're always exhausted. You're always tired. You're always 2 steps behind. You're always a little bit sad. You're always working just to keep it together and not fall apart. What I want to tell you this morning is your soul is thirsty. It's thirsty. Other people in this room have already lived the chase of the American dream. You've already lived a life in your 30s and 40s and 50s, and you've come to this realization of what really matters, and so you're not in this pursuit of what the world tells you you should be pursuing. But it doesn't mean you're not thirsty. Maybe you're consumed by wishing for the past to return. Maybe for things to be as they once were, if they would just be like that again. Maybe you're wishing to recapture an old love, to have moments back. Can I tell you, the invitation today is listen to your thirst. I thought it was interesting. I was reading about thirst in the desert heat of Arizona. Cortland's from Arizona. He could confirm this or not. It's really hot there, but it's really dry, and so you might be out in the sun and you're not sweating, and so you don't even realize. It's not like Oklahoma. Like, you realize if it's hot, your clothes are drenched. You're like, I need a drink. But in Arizona, you might be working really hard, and it's so dry, you're not really sweating. You might not even fully know that you're thirsty. And so in Grand Canyon National Park, there are actually signs that say, stop, drink water, even if you don't realize you are thirsty. Isn't that interesting? They know that we don't always even recognize that we're thirsty. And so the invitation today is for the thirsty. It's for those that know and recognize, man, I'm thirsty. It's also for those of us who are pedaling so fast that we don't even know we need a drink. And God promises to truly satisfy us if only we come to him to meet our deepest needs. Jesus says in Matthew 19, truly I tell you, it's hard for someone who's rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I tell you, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who's rich to enter the kingdom of God. In fact, my hunch is that this isn't because the kingdom of God excludes wealthy people. This isn't talking about the end of times in which God's going to look at your checkbook and recognize whether or not you can come through the pearly gates. But the reason Jesus says it like this is because the kingdom way, God's version of the good life, it fails to attract the already satisfied. You don't even know you're thirsty. You see, we in the West have this hurdle to jump. We don't know thirst. We don't know what it is to have no money or no food. In our self-sufficiency, there is no really space for a God that longs to meet our deepest needs. I was stopped in my tracks this week as I was studying this passage by this quote from theologian Paul Hansen. He says, all that can exclude you from this invitation is your insisting that there are places you would rather be. All that can keep you from God's invitation to come and be satisfied is insisting to him that there are other, better, more fulfilling places you'd rather be. In our small group this week, Jessica asked the question, what keeps you? What keeps you from accepting the bountiful love of God, the goodness of God, just how great he is to us? What keeps us from truly accepting that? And I had to admit in that moment that sometimes I'm so overstimulated and I'm so comfortable that I don't really want it. I've got enough good things in my life. That's how blessed I am. I'm so overstimulated that I don't even pause to recognize I'm thirsty. So like the sign in the Grand Canyon National Park, Isaiah's grabbing our attention today. You better recognize your thirst and then accept this simple invitation to come to God. It's an invitation for the good life, and it's a good life that's less about consumption and more about compassion. It's a good life that's less about control and more about consent. It's less about comparison. It's more about community. It's less about competition. It's more about care. It's less about certainty and more about conviction. It's less about me and more about Christ in me. Listen to 1 John chapter 2. in the Message paraphrase. This is verse 15 through 17, sums up what we're talking about really well. It says, don't love the world's ways. Don't love the world's goods. Love of the world squeezes out love for the Father. Practically everything that goes on in the world, wanting your own way, wanting everything for yourself, wanting to appear important, has nothing to do with the Father. It just isolates you from him. The world and all its wanting is on the way out, but whoever does what God wants is set for eternity. And as the band comes this morning, in just a moment, we're going to respond to this invitation by taking part in a free meal. Just like Isaiah's invitation, we will respond to the invitation to come to the table of the Lord and receive. And we do this meal in community. We do it together to remind ourselves that it's available to everyone. There is no one who is excluded from this goodness and this grace. But also to remind ourselves that we are not alone when we pursue God's version of the good life. That together we are an alternative community saying AT&T and Cadillac can have their good life. I'm going this way. I'm going to the table of the Lord. So in a few moments, you'll step out of your aisle if you'd like, and to the right, you'll come down and you can take a piece of bread and dip it in the cup and receive right there at your station. You don't have to be a member of this church to receive communion with us. If you're trusting Jesus for your salvation and his grace, you're invited to the table. But if you're not ready, no pressure. You don't have to come either. If you're more comfortable with 2 cups stacked together, you can visit the table in the back. And if you'd like to be served in your seat, just raise your hand, get the attention of one of our pastors, and they'll serve you there. As I prepared for this moment, all I could think about this week was the psalmist's word in Psalm 34. Such a simple word, 34 verse 8. Would you taste and see that the Lord is good? Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him. Blessed is the one whose good life starts at the table of the Lord. And the offer is still on the table. It was on the table over 2,500 years ago, and now it's on the table for you. This is actually from Isaiah. Come, all you who are thirsty. Come to the waters, and you who have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk without money and without cost. Why spend your life and spend your money on what is not bread, your labor on what does not satisfy? Listen to me. Do you eat what is good? You will delight in the richest of fare. When you're ready this morning, would you slip out of your seat and accept the invitation of God's good life for you? Come, receive.
God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Amazing love that welcomes me, the kindness of mercy that bought with blood wholeheartedly my soul undeserving. And God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Behold the cross, age to age, and hour by hour. The dead are raised, the sinner saved, the work of your power. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Would you stand to your feet and sing that with us? God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. One more time, just our voices singing. God, you're so good. And God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. Aren't you grateful you came to church today? So it was a couple days later, after Justin had come by, I was sitting there having a conversation with Cara Lee. It just dawned on me that I had zero reason to ever think that I was even a second behind in the good life. I just had my third child. I was married to my best friend, beautiful wife. I had everything I ever needed, a good family that taught me the ways of the Lord, a church that loved me, a job that I really cared about. And yet somehow, in that moment, I felt small, and I thought, man, isn't that ridiculous? I have every reason to give God praise, to be grateful for all the blessings in my life. Yet here I was, stumbling around, confused. So I had a moment in Isaiah 55, just a couple verses after what we read today, where I returned to the Lord. And it actually talks about this. Right after the invitation, you see these words from Isaiah 55. It says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, my thoughts than your thoughts." And then look at verse 6. This is the invitation. "Seek the Lord while he may be found, and call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways, and the unrighteous their thoughts. Let them turn to the Lord, and he will have mercy on them, and to our God, for he will freely pardon." And so that's our calling as a church today. Whatever the good life looked like to us as we came into this place, we seek the Lord while he may be found. Ask him to plant in us a new version of the good life. And so as you go from this place, would you go in the truth of God's version of the good life? And may you stay thirsty as you seek after his goodness and his grace. I love you guys. Have a great week. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so